Today we're talking about the Boris FX plugin for photo editing called Optics. But what the heck is Boris FX? Boris FX is a professional suite of video and VFX plugins. So the team at Boris FX has created a new plugin called Optics. Optics is a photo editing software where you can add basically their suite of video effects like crazy lens flares, really high-end looking stuff to your photos. You can work with it in tandem with Photoshop or Lightroom, or you can use Optics as a standalone plugin if you don't have Adobe products. It's a very powerful tool, and I'm excited to dive into it, show you guys what it's all about, and do some experimenting. We're gonna go shoot some photos and add some Optics effects on top of them. It's gonna be sick. So for this first photo, our goal was to create something that looked like you're in a virtual world. So we have Connor wearing this VR headset, and here's kind of an inspiration photo that we found that we're kind of going for. The goal was to challenge Optics as a program and see if it could make this really bright daylight shot look like nighttime and be able to make it look like Connor's in this crazy virtual fantasy world.
Okay, so we literally finished shooting the VR photo in like a quarter of a minute.
Yeah, so fast.
It really didn't take any time at all, mainly because that one we're planning on doing a ton of processing to.
Yep.
So it almost doesn't matter how that photo looks per se.
We're changing the whole background.
We're gonna really push that one to its limits. Now this next one, we're actually gonna be doing like a Western 1800s-esque style photo.
Somewhat Red Dead Redemption vibe, but heavily stylized like 1800s.
We want to make it look like a photo that was taken in the 1800s that's just survived all the way to today.
I will now transition into my childhood dream character, a cowboy.
Okay, so we're gonna shoot on, for this photo specifically, a vintage lens. Now, this lens wasn't out when the 1800s were around, but it should give us a little bit more character to the photo, which is what we're kind of going for as an aesthetic as a whole.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure shooting out here with you in the wilderness. Now we gotta take these photographs into our editor and throw them into Boris FX Optics and make them look impeccable.
I mean, you already look impeccable.
Is it the super tight jeans that I was gonna donate because they're too small?
Yeah, it's definitely
Okay,
that.
cool, right. And drink my moonshine. So we have our first photo here, me wearing cowboy clothes that are much too tight for me. And we're gonna transform it. So we've already gone through and edited it, how we want it to look, and I'm just gonna give you a quick run through of the layers to show you how unique you can make your photos look. So the first thing we added was a nice little bloom. So basically, this just took our highlights and kind of softened them up. Then we decided to add this ray effect, which is really cool. You can get directional rays. So we added our ray, and what's cool is you get these presets, which are basically like really nice Instagram filters. You can think of it that way. But if you click on parameters here, you get full custom control of the rays. So you can kind of see them here underneath my hand holding the gun. I can crank up the brightness, I can change the direction, I can do whatever I want. And you can also add a layer of atmosphere that kind of makes it look like there's smoke or fog in front of you and adds some really nice depth to the image. So then we added our look filter, and this is how we got that nice sepia tone, however that's said. After looks, we added a nice little curve, which kind of made our highlights pop and made you focus more on the subject. So here's where things start to get real wild. We added this film damage effect, which gives us scratches, dust, these crazy hairs. And if you go into the parameters of film damage, look at all these freaking layers of control that you get. So for instance, if we want to add more stains, you can just turn this thing up and it will add stains. There was one on my face that was kind of distracting, so we decided just to back this off a little bit, and it took the one off of my face. And then to get it completely unique, you can use this vary stain opacity, you can vary the stain size. So basically, other people that are using Optics, you're not gonna get the exact same look as them because all of this is fully customizable and you can add a randomness to it. Then we used their masking tool and created this blur because using a modern camera makes the image look really sharp, and we want this to look really old where things weren't as sharp back then. So we created a mask around me and then just added a simple blur at 1.5 just to soften the detail a little bit, make it look a bit more vintage. And we feathered that mask so it just kind of faded into the background as well. Connor discovered that this mask tool is magnetic on its own. So you can just kind of click around your subject and it will kind of stick to the lines. And then we have a nice border. This vintage style border was really cool. And then our final layer is a texture layer. And this just kind of glued everything together and you can kind of see the soft differences. We picked a texture out of the random texture pack and then customize it so that it's going in line with the direction of the gun, so it kind of all flows together. And it kind of just created another layer between the viewer and the image, kind of like those old photos where they just look like they're stamped in time. It's not like you're super immersed. You're kind of looking at an old artifact, essentially.
Hi, Green Screen Zach here, just popping in for a second. So I showed you guys my process on how I made my images, but now I'm gonna show you a couple of alternate edits. I sent this photo to the team at Boris FX and they came up with some of their own edits because they're better at this plugin than I am. So I'll show you guys just some alternate options of what you can do. There's so much you can do in this plugin. And then I'm gonna show you some more alternates for Connor's image that we're gonna look at next.
For this second photo, we wanted to do something a little more intense for the photo editing software. So we thought it'd be cool to do a like VR style alternate reality fantasy, very colorful photo. So the first thing that we wanted to do was we wanted to isolate the sky so that we could do a day for night. So they actually have this really cool mask effect called Easy Mask. And I'll go ahead and bring it up so that you guys can see what we did. Basically, you just draw green lines roughly where you want it to mask out the sky and including the trees and foliage here. And then you put red anywhere you don't, so our foreground. So once you apply that, we got this kind of nice darkened sky. Obviously, it needs a lot more work still. So another thing that we went ahead and did was isolate now the foreground, and then we added a curves effects and brought down the highlights and added a bit of a blueness effect for that same kind of day to night feel. So what's really cool about this optics program is they have these things called renders, so you can actually add in really cool objects like laser beams, and in this case we wanted to add a moon. This is a harvest moon, so it kind of has that orangey feel. I did a screen effect to kind of make it have like an atmosphere kind of out in the night sky look. Another thing we wanted to do was add the stars, so we actually duplicated our mask and then I just kind of tweaked it a little bit so that we could add a bunch of stars. Now obviously this is a lot of stars. I don't think you could see that unless maybe you were in Alaska, but we thought it looked cool, and again we're going for this unworldly kind of virtual reality vibe, so more is better in this case. We added this kind of cool lens flare effect, again using the Easy Mask. It's so crude. I mean, it's like drawing stick figures and then it just somehow figures out what we want. And they have tons and tons of different lens flares and you can do so much stuff. We ended up kind of going with this textured flare, so it almost looks more like energy or aura than a lens flare itself. And the last thing we did to tie it all together was we added some atmosphere to the image, just kind of hiding all the mistakes that we made along the way.
Hi, I'm back. I told you we're gonna look at Connor's alternate images as well. We just want to say a huge thank you to Boris FX team for taking our photos and working with them, tweaking them and making their own versions. It's just fun to play around with this stuff and make different variations of a creative image. So thank you guys for seeing these with your eyes.
It's not all sunshine and rainbows when it comes to this app. We do have some critiques. Sometimes their layering system seemed to be a bit confusing. In all fairness, we may have been using it wrong as we're semi-new to it. We were just kind of toying around. But for example, when we were doing the Western vintage photo, we wanted to add that border, but we didn't really care for the fact that it was kind of black and white. So we thought, okay, well, we'll bring the border down below our filter that kind of added that vintage brownish yellow color to the photo. but it wouldn't apply to it. For some reason, they just didn't seem to work how our brain thought it should work.
The first awesome feature about interacting with this whole Boris Optics effects plugin is just the sheer volume of effects. There are so many different things you can use to apply to your photos to get a unique look. And even just like the lens flares alone, which is my favorite part of optics, there are so many to choose from in the presets, and then you go into the parameters and you create your own flare essentially. So there's just like so much customization when it comes to all their different effects. That being said, there are some effects in optics that we would like to see become more fleshed out. Like for instance, their borders, there's only about 9 of them, and you can customize it a little bit, but not as intensely as the flares. So it'd be cool to just kind of see a little bit more customization come to the entire effects library. Now, Connor and I are a couple Adobe boys. We've been using Photoshop and Lightroom, and the great thing about optics is it works seamlessly with Adobe products. So if you're starting an image in Photoshop or Lightroom, you can easily shoot it over to optics to finish your edit, and then go back to Lightroom, for instance, and all your edits will be applied to the Lightroom file for exporting. Optics is a tool that we're gonna keep in our creative toolkit, and specifically, I'm gonna keep using it for YouTube thumbnails. It's helped us kind of spice things up using their flares and atmosphere looks. Let me know what you guys think of optics, and if you wanna try it out for yourself, check out the link in the description. Also, we have a Discord server with over 100 members of cool camera people. Feel free to join that. Check out our Patreon so Connor can continue working with us. It's been awesome having him. And subscribe to be enrolled in our camera camp coming up later this year. Thank you. Drive safe.